Men, if you give her a little intimacy, then she'll give you the pussy. And women, if you want him to open up to you and be intimate, then you got to give it up. And it's just this transactional nature of sex. It is my mission to just smash that into the ground. Women want sex, especially women who are over the age of 30. They are very horny. It is very true. And also, men are emotionally complicated creatures that want deep connection. They want to be seen. They want to see. They want to feel loved. They want space to express the full range of their emotions.
Welcome to Safe to Love, where we are on a mission to help the world believe in love again and give you the courage to find it. I'm so excited to introduce my love, my life, my partner, and my co-host of the Safe to Love podcast, Chad Kirk Nielson. Hi, Chad.
Hi, and thank you for having me on. Really love that mission.
Thank you for having me on your show.
Thank you for having me on your show.
On my show. Chad, I would love to know if you could just tell us a little bit about your story of how you ended up here as an intimacy coach and hosting a podcast about love.
Yes, it's definitely, my story has definitely been an interesting one. And, I was thinking before I came on the show about the parts that are relevant for that. And really, I had to go all the way back to my teenage years when I was a drug addict and life was very hopeless. And maybe that's why I love talking about hope, because I know what it's like to have lost hope completely, not just in love, but in life itself. And then at the age of 21, I found myself sober in 12-step recovery and spent a decade and a half there, actually. And part of that process was something called sponsorship, which is where it's an act of service where one person, one alcoholic or drug addict, sits down with another and shares their experience, strength, and hope and guides them through their own process of recovery and finding hope again. And that was honestly, the most rewarding part of my life, really, for the first 35 years of my life. There's something truly indescribably magical about that kind of one-on-one work with another person where you get to witness someone come from the depths of despair, come from having given up, come from that state of hopelessness that we see behind the eyes of too many people, whether it be not just drug addicts and alcoholics, but people in general as we go about our lives, and get to see that light come on and get to see them come back to life and recreate their life from the ground up. And when around the age of 35, for reasons that aren't really, relevant here, that world of 12-step recovery no longer aligned with the spiritual journey I was on. Mm-hmm. And I had to kind of go on to yet another hero's journey off kind of into the unknown and find myself again. And that process was very dark, as they often are, right? There's one of the hardest parts about anything, and I think this is really relevant whenever we talk about divorce and some of the work that I do today as well, is coaching women and men through the initial process of going through a divorce, is we have to leave behind what we know and step into the unknown. And there's a curious thing about human beings is it doesn't even really matter how horrible the known is, right? And I think in fact, I was bringing this up with a client, there's this phenomenon that will happen with people that are incarcerated, where at some point they don't want to leave prison.
Interesting. Yeah.
Because it's become comfortable, right? And so that's really always what takes the most courage to make a big life transition, to leave a relationship doesn't work, to set out on a new career, is that the unknown is always more terrifying than what's known. And it takes a point in our life where, it's very cliche, but where the pain of staying the same becomes greater than the fear of change. Mm-hmm. But I was in a dark place for a while. And I eventually found a new community. I eventually found new spiritual work. I really believe that, having been an atheist for the first 20 years of my life, that spirituality and what it is very personal to me, and I think it's very personal to every person, is a really key part of living a happy and fulfilled life. And I found all of that. I found that in this community. I found different ways to connect with God, to connect with the divinity within me and with other people. And then I met this woman, and I think, most great stories start off that way. I met this woman who came into my life for a period of time to teach me a lesson and sort of bend the arc of my life in a different direction. And, leading up to that point, I've always been a man that had a very fractured relationship with my masculinity. Very wounded, disconnected relationship with my masculinity. My father died when I was 8. I grew up, my mom raised me, and I grew up almost entirely without any real male guidance. The male guidance that I had in my life were like the 30-year-old dudes that I would do drugs with when I was 15. So they were probably worse than nothing, if I'm being honest.
Yeah.
And like most young men, the guidance that I had was from media, right? I learned from media what it meant to be a man. I learned to how to value myself as a man. And I learned what masculinity meant, both from, news and the way other people talked. And, we learn a lot from movies. I think the younger generation today probably learns a lot more from social media. But when we grew up, TV and movies were really they played a really outsized role in how we learned our values and how we came up with our understanding of things. And so I learned a couple things. That one, the traditional presentation of masculinity did not resonate with me. And two, that my worth was dependent upon my sexual conquest. And I think that's, I always tell people, if you really want to understand a movie that captures what it's like to be a young man, at least in America, watch American Pie. And there's this scene where Stifler comes in, and the whole movie is about these kids who basically feel shame and judgment and worthlessness because their virginity. And there's this point where Stifler comes in and says, "I'll see you guys in the no fucking section." And that was my experience. I constantly felt pressure and judgment and shame from having had a lack of sexual experience from compared to other people in my peer group.
Real quick, I want to ask, what movies were you watching that influenced you, and what did you learn from those that didn't resonate from you?
I can't really think of any particular movies that back then I watched. It was really a lot more from social. Well, I grew up on 3 shows that shaped me. One was Star Trek: The Next Generation. So Jean-Luc Picard, played by Sir Patrick Stewart, was pretty much my surrogate father. And I think is the only reason that I have anything good. The Simpsons, where I learned my sense of political cynicism and snark about the world. And Married with Children,
Where
I learned how to do this, which I still enjoy. I do still enjoy. I don't know why, but it's very comforting. And a lot of bad lessons, right? That there's the character in that show, Bud. His whole character was just mocked and ridiculed. I mean, Bud was the original incel before incel was a term. The whole premise of that show was he was constantly mocked for failing to get sex from women, whereas his sister was constantly mocked for being sexually promiscuous, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing. Like, I really believe that we don't give satirical fiction enough credit, because it exaggerates something, but it reveals something that's very real, right? And not to get kind of ahead of myself, but that is such an under-discussed dichotomy in American society. We talk a lot about how women are judged, that their value goes down by society with their sexual exploits, right? Like, we even talk about the extreme examples of, Mormon girls being told your body is a piece of bubble gum. And if you have sex, it becomes a chewed piece of bubble gum. This really happens, and it disgusts me. I literally can't even talk about it without getting upset. But on the other end, men are socialized, and primarily from other men, to gain social status and worth in the tribe
Mm.
by the quantity and quality of women they've had sex with.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, one thing I really try to speak to, especially young men a lot, and I really get to see this having a son now as a teenager, this socialization, this pressure to go out and get laid, and you see it all the time you still see it all the time in rom-coms about young people, right? Like men just want to fuck.
Yeah.
Men just want to get laid. And there's so much of this that does not even come from their own biological desires.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's true. We're like young men are horny. I'm not going to pretend they're not. But what's really driving that to a self-destructive level is the social pressure from other men. You do not get social status in other circles of men without talking about your sexual exploits. At least in younger men. I think as we get into middle age, we tend to grow out of it, but the damage is done. The programming is there.
Yeah, for sure.
And so these were kind of some things that drove me, but I also had this really, I didn't want to be what I had seen presented as masculine. Like the masculine presentation was like Stifler or the gym bro or the person who was cruel and objectified women and took. I didn't want to be a taker. And so I kind of wholesale rejected my masculinity. I had really, and I would just say I'm very comfortable with my feminine side. I didn't think I was that masculine of a person. And so I met this woman who had been doing a lot of work with a tantric coach. And she, in the course of that work, as part of her own healing journey, had really deeply connected to this like kind of divine sexual femininity within her. And I met her, it was really like kind of divine timing as well. I met her during the fall of the first COVID year of 2020, when there really wasn't a whole else going on. Like I was working in my medical engineering field, but I'll be honest, that whole year we didn't accomplish much. Like we were at home. I would I probably logged 10 hours of actual work a week and still somehow was outperforming my peers because nobody just knew what to do. So I kind of had this fall where and she wasn't working at the time, and we just spent days at a time in kind of a little love bubble. And during that experience, I found a connection with my own masculinity and found that actually, to my surprise, I had a very strong masculine core that really only came out in its proper context, right? With somebody who was very embodied, who was very connected, who really was able to understand and connect with me on an emotional level. Because that's, by the way, another trope of of traditional masculinity, that men are simple. Men are emotionally simple. I've never really got to know a man in my life that was emotionally simple, by the way. But we are taught that we are emotionally simple. We are taught that we are, so much so that we don't even know it's a performance, and we just take all those complicated emotions and stick them down. Yeah. And then they come out in anger, right?
So the symptom of that for men, how do you think that shows up?
Oh, I think it shows up in a lot of ways. I mean, I think it shows up in anger, and a sense of persecution, which, to be honest, I can really relate to. It's 2025 right now as we're recording this. We are experiencing the results of 2024 in America. And, that was driven for the first time in my life. Young men, any group of adults under 25, they voted for the Republican Party. And the core of that was this angst in young men. And it's talked about a lot. They call it the loneliness crisis amongst men. It's talked about and then it's ridiculed. So if you go search loneliness crisis in men right now on the internet, you're probably equally as likely to find an article trying to bring light to it as you are an article mocking it. But we are at an age where people are not having sexual romantic relations at a record low level. And these things aren't easily quantifiable, but they are, when the shift is that significant, they can. And so men are feeling lonely, And that there's so many symptoms of that, right? Men are feeling lonely, so they're not getting emotional, intimate connection. But also, as we go back to what I said before, they're feeling like failures.
Yeah.
They're told like you're failing, and this is programming
Man up.
This is programming that is, I cannot stress this, it comes before sexual desire, right? Like if you look at the time when you really start to care about dating and intimacy and romance, say maybe 12, 13, like this is the kind of way that men talk to each other about these things in 6th grade. Like we are socialized and we are programmed to want to gain the approval of other men before we're even interested in women. So as we develop our sexual desires and we start to go through puberty and we start to gain a desire for dating and intimate relations, we have already had so much into us that our primary motivation is still the approval of other men. And so not only when someone is, whether they're a young man or a woman or of any age, but really this is showing up right now. I just bring this up as showing up right now, especially in young men. There's also this sense of failure because, again, our value is tied to our sexual conquest, to our ability to get a mate, to our ability to find a partner, whether that be from the sort of, you might call it the degenerative side, where, your bros are asking how many chicks you slept with that weekend at a party, or you go all the way to the hyper conservative religious side, where your parents and your clergy and every single person you talk to is asking when you're going to get married and start a family.
Yeah.
So we're seeing both this confluence of genuine sense of a loss of fulfillment in sex and romance, and also this feelings of immense failure. And when we feel like this sense of shame put upon us by society, we lash out. We lash out and we blame them. And so there are men everywhere. I did this deep dive into what's called the manosphere, and I won't go into that very well right now. I think that's something I'd really love to bring Cam on to talk about, but there are a lot of groups out there that will exploit young men's angst and feelings of victimhood, right? Young men are feeling like the world is blaming them for their problems and they don't think it's fair. And when somebody is feeling hurt and vulnerable, it's very easy for a, dark voice to come in and whisper, well, it's their fault, and point that finger at women. And so you're seeing this breakdown, this literal, we used to call it the war of the sexes, but it's almost literally happening right now. There's never been more angst, especially in the younger demographic, the Generation Z, between men and women. They're literally like anger and hatred at each other. And that's what happens. I mean, unfortunately, anger is one emotion that men are taught by other men is safe to have. So if we can't express all of our complicated emotions, then they're going to come out as anger. So anyway, so I get this experience with this person, and it was one of those.
You are masculine.
I realized that I am masculine, and I to tell a long story short, TLDR, exactly that was exactly it, and I cannot overstate what a revelation this was for me. Here I am now, 5 years removed from that story, and I wear that rather confidently and sometimes cockily, but I do have that kind of shit-eating grin smirk that I wear sometimes. But it was really surprising to me at the time. And also I realized that this pursuit that I had been on ever since because I was divorced. I had been divorced about 7 or 8 years before then. So I'd been single for a long time. And again, I wasn't even entirely aware of how much I was chasing a new partnership, not just because I was lonely. I wanted companionship. I wanted sex. Everybody wants sex, by the way, and there's nothing wrong with that. But also because I felt like such a failure as a divorcee, right? The single divorcee man who can't hold down a consistent relationship, who is not having sex for periods of time. Like I was having sex, but I was also having months without sex and just feeling like, what a failure am I? Right? Because for
even though you were an engineer and making good money,
it didn't matter.
Which is like usually
it didn't matter then. It didn't matter. I mean, if you're, that's that's just the way we're wired, right?
Mm-hmm.
If we're doing 4 things well and 1 thing wrong, that 1 thing wrong is all we focus on, right?
Yeah.
That's just the way we're wired to pay attention to threats. And I also realized that I had a lot to offer. I had learned a lot in the ways of dating and intimacy, and that deep, like the sexual fulfillment that everybody's seeking, that sells so much, is really more about emotional intimacy than it is about sex itself. Now, don't get me wrong, kinks and exploration, toys, those are all very valid and important. And I think
What's this mean?
this is
Just kidding.
you got to trim your nails, babe, and then I'll show you. Then I'll teach you. But that's a whole other story. If you want to, by the way, if you're a woman and want to know how to, please
ask me.
Please contact me. There's a lot of really dangerous information out there that I'm kind of, one of my side projects is to correct. Thank you, Trisha. I'm really proud of you. But so I just realized I had a lot. I had this sense that I was failing at that, and that I didn't know a lot. I didn't know a lot about how to be a man. I didn't know a lot about how to be a good lover. And I kind of had this sort of healing in that relationship, and realized how much of those stories were not mine and were not true, and that I had actually a lot to teach. And I also had this hole in my life where sponsorship used to be, and that's the only reason I bring that in. I really want to kind of honor the anonymity of the 12-step program, but I think it's really important to understand that, like, I had found community, and I'd found spirituality, and I'd started to find all of the things. It took me about a year that I had lost when I left 12-step recovery, but I was not doing any kind of one-on-one work with another man. And it just, in the serendipitous way that the universe works, after that relationship ended, she actually moved to Costa Rica, and I was back in another one of those dark nights of the soul. Somebody that I followed on Instagram, Cam Fraser, like, put on his story, like, hey, I'm starting a class. I'm starting somebody that I'd followed and very much respected. And I really, he's one of the few people that I just wholesale would endorse. Like, that man has deep integrity and really speaks to a lot of what men need, and how to understand men, and how to understand what it's like to be a man. And he was creating a course called Sacred Sexuality Coaching for Men. And I said, you know what? I'm going to do that. And it was one of those things where I didn't really want to tell anybody about it. I wanted to do it, but I didn't have, like, the confidence to really even speak about it. So I kind of was doing it on the down low. But I went and I took that course, and it was really, really cool. It was really, really taught me a whole lot, and kind of started to give me a little bit of the confidence. And I found, as part of any kind of good coaching course, by the way, if you're looking at any kind of coaching, whatever it is, and this doesn't include a practicum where you take actual volunteer clients and have them graded, then I would not give them your money. But as part of this course, we had some volunteer clients, and I just realized, like, when I would be working with a client, when I would be sitting down and talking to a man about sex and intimacy and love and the struggles that they have with it, that there was all that doubt. And this is just sort of the magic of service, right? All the shadows of self leave us in those moments when we're really focused on being of service. And I knew, like, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. And I've also always had a sense about me of just very authentic vulnerability that makes other people open up to me easier. I learned this in my entire time in recovery. People would always just tell me that. They'd be like, you shared, and it made me feel more able to share my dark story, right? And I had found too that a lot of men that I had known that had done a lot of healing work, a lot of recovery, a lot of therapy, a lot of whatever, like the things that we do in our adulthood to try to unfuck ourselves, right? And to grow into deeper human beings. a lot of the men that I had known still had that as their like dark secret. And men would tell me secrets of not even, I mean, not a lot of them, honestly, they don't even feel like secrets, but at the time, any kind of sexual discussion that isn't bravado is very hard for men, right? Like we're taught, like when men in most circles, and I really want to really emphasize that last part because we are changing this. We are changing this reality slowly, but I'm a part of many communities where this is not true and we're growing. But today, 2025, most circles of men, when men talk to each other about sex, it's the only thing that we talk about is how big our dick is, how great we were, and how many women we've been with. It's all bravado. It's just like we tell fish stories, but we tell them about sex. There's very little space for a man to say, you know, I'm having a hard time getting an erection. There's very little space for a man to say, I'm having a hard time lasting. There's very little space for a man to say, I worry my dick is too small. But these are the things that a lot of men think about. And so I felt like I had sort of kind of this ability, this sense about me that men felt more comfortable telling me these things and wanted to pursue that. Now, I should point out, though, that, you know, this story, like many stories, did not go linearly. After that, I kind of failed to launch my coaching practice. My day job was a medical device engineer, and I got a fancy new gig as a director of a startup in this great corner office downtown, and kind of let that take me off the path. And for about 2 years after that, I never ended up, I worked a couple more practice clients, but I just sort of let that, all of it, the distraction, the excuses, the imposter syndrome, I let the fear take me off of that course. And I went back to what was comfortable and familiar, even though it was far from fulfilling. And that was working in a regulated medical device industry and pushing papers around and, trying to bring a human element into that. Like I liked having people that I worked with and worked for, but the work was never fulfilling. And then fast forward to last October, I met up with the same tantric coach that had been the coach of the woman earlier in the story. She was in town. We went to lunch because we'd always had a great rapport and just kind of caught up. And she just said to me, like, I mean, she just gave me the business, and she knew,
told you the truth.
She knew the message that would get to me was because I've always found that, like, when I'm sort of stuck, I'm not as like personally motivated to get unstuck is hard for me. But she said, you know, there's a lot of men out there that need your help, and you're just dicking around. I mean, that's paraphrasing, but that's what she said. And in those kind of moments of like clarity and internal clarity and courage, I said, all right, well, I will commit the next time you're in town, because she was in town for a tantric retreat that she'd invited me to, and I had all these reasons not to go, money, time, whatever. I said, I commit the next time you're in town.
And she was staying at my house and told me
she was staying at your house at that time. Actually, I picked her up from where you were staying at the time.
Yeah. She's like, do you want to come? And I was like, no.
No. Well, that's good. We weren't quite ready.
We weren't ready.
We weren't quite ready.
Yeah.
And I said, but I told her I'd commit to that. And I believe, and I don't commit to things, as you can attest to this. It's probably very frustrating sometimes. I don't commit to things willy-nilly, like, because I believe that a commitment is a deeper level than an intention. And when I commit to something, then I believe I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
And I also believe I believe this from personal experience, that when we really commit to something, the universe will conspire to make it possible. So I committed to her, the next time you're in town, I will go to your retreat, whatever it is, whenever it is. And she said, okay. And then a couple months later, she sends me a flyer for her next retreat in town, which is a couples tantra retreat. And I said to her, I don't have a partner. And she said, that's okay, because I got someone for you. And that's how I met April. And and then things started to move so quickly. Like the universe it's crazy how we have those moments of our lives where everything starts to swirl and happen all at once, right? Like the universe sort of moves in these like slow movements and then these jumps. I got laid off from that big fancy job and could not get another job to save my life. I entered a job market that in corporate America was very broken. Corporate America is very broken, which is not the topic of the show, but it's kind of funny how it worked in my favor. At the exact same time, I met April, and we agreed like neither of us were in a place that we wanted to date. I had gotten out of a very, very toxic relationship, and I say that not to say that that person was toxic. I don't believe in calling people toxic. Sometimes I do, but I don't believe in it. But our relationship was really bad, and it was one of those times in my life where I was like, I wanted to retreat from the world of dating, put my dick on ice and just lick my wounds for a couple years before I ever put my heart out there again. And April was also in a spot where she was like, yeah, I'm not ready to date. I just got separated. And so we said, okay, well, let's just create this tantric healing partner container where we would explore. We didn't even know what, nobody knew. The coach, the tantric facilitator of this event, she's the one that's like, this is a tantric healing partnership, but she didn't know what it was either. No, but it was beautiful. I like that.
Making it up as
I like that. I mean, I love making things up as I go along. Right? Give me like the slightest bit of guidance, and then let me cook with it. And so we just started to get to know each other without this pressure of dating, without this pressure of even sex. Was just like, let's just get to know each other in sort of this tantric space of energy and intimacy, and see what happens. And what happened was very quickly we realized we had a lot in common, and we had a lot of the same vision, and we started having these beautiful conversations that weren't about what we wanted to do with each other yet. Were about what we wanted to create in the world. And this podcast actually predates our first kiss. The idea, the dream of this podcast predates our first kiss, and I love that so much. And that's kind of going to that story when we tell the story of our love story. But the thing was is that April basically said to me very early on, and I was still again, as a man, another thing by the way, another thing that is tied to our value is also our ability to earn money. So when you said, well, you were earning good money, but you weren't having sex, it's like, yes, but guess what? Like, we got to do both. To be a man and feel like we're traditionally society, like to feel whole, we have to be earning good money and having good sex. And if we're not doing both, then we're a failure. So I was going through this very deep crisis of the one thing I'd always been good at ever since I graduated, even though I felt like a failure to everything else at times in my life, was making money, and I wasn't making any money. I didn't know how I was going to pay my mortgage. I didn't know how I was going to support my family. Like, I was just deep in fear and scarcity. And April said to me, like, you're not meant to be an engineer. You're not going back to that. You're meant to be a coach. Like, cause she had known about my background and how I kind of failed to get that going. And just in kind of her divine feminine way, like, said that very early in knowing me. And I remember cause I'm somebody that lets people in slowly.
You're a little upset.
I was like, who? You don't know me. You didn't know me. I got bills to pay. I got shit to do, But I was like, but yeah, this podcast sounds like fun. So we, but it was just like, it was almost like the universe knew that I was ready, knew that I'd had enough experience. I'd found enough depth of courage, and I'd found the right support. And it was time. And it was time, whether or not I was ready, the world is ready. The world is ready for a deep sense of healing, and on many levels. And, my part to play in that great awakening is to help men, primarily men. I do work with women sometimes in specific circumstances, but primarily men, to help heal their relationship with their sexuality, with their masculinity, and teach them that they actually do want intimacy. It is not a commodity that they trade for sex, which is how it is portrayed in 95+% of social dynamics in media, right? Like, men, if you give her a little intimacy, then she'll give you the pussy. And women, if you want him to open up to you and be intimate, then you got to give it up. And it's just this transactional nature of sex. Like, it is my mission to just smash that into the ground. Women want sex, especially women who are in the over the age of 30. They are very horny. It is very true. And also, men are emotionally complicated creatures that want deep connection. They want to be seen. They want to see. They want to feel loved. They want space to express the full range of their emotions. And so yeah, I'm not very good at staying in my lane. I never have been. So I do call myself an intimacy coach, because primarily that has been the focus of a lot of what I do. But sex is just a part of that. Intimacy, I just look at it like sex is here and intimacy is here, and I want to help men have better sex. That's also how I can help women. Mm-hmm. But women's in the course of dating and being single, which is in my past, which I'm happy to say, I went on at least 100 first dates, and that's not a brag. That's actually kind of like not a good statistic. I didn't have 100 second dates. I definitely didn't have 100, sexual encounters or 100 girlfriends, but I went on over 100 first dates, and I would just listen, because I like listening. I guess it's always been my skill. I'm just a curious person by nature. And, I found this very deep, difference between the story of what women's chief complaint about men was in social media and in media, and what women would complain to me about in social media and in women. It's a constant barrage of men are too forward, men are just trying to get laid, men are sending you dick pics. And
don't approach me at the gym.
Don't approach me at the gym. Don't approach me at the coffee shop. Don't approach me at the DMV.
Don't approach me.
Don't approach me. I mean, literally, that is just don't approach me. Mm-hmm. And I'm not here to invalidate that is the experience that women have. They've felt creeped on. They felt uncomfortable. They've had men. Everyone has had that experience. But the chief frustration that women would tell me when we were dating, in their experience of dating, is that men won't
approach them.
They won't initiate. Mm-hmm. They're afraid to kind of make moves. They don't know how to shift into a sexual energy. They don't know how to create polarity in the bedroom, and they're very frustrated. And I live in Salt Lake City, the heart of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, also known as the Mormons. So my sample size is skewed in that way, but I really doubt that it's that different. Women are like, they're frustrated because men don't know how to show up as men in intimacy and romance and in the bedroom. Mm-hmm. And so this is where I just am somebody that goes where the need is. I sense the need for service. I sense the need for what I can do and offer, and I go there. And that's where the biggest need is. And how we got to this podcast is I'd learned a lot about safety, this embodied sense of safety, and what that means, and how that is, because I had had some of those relationships that some people have had, a lot of people have had, not everybody, where they're like just hot and wild and unbelievably painful, just this roller coaster of emotions. And I learned that like intimacy, connection, being vulnerable, being seen, being touched, both physically and emotionally, without safety, is just re-traumatizing. It's hell. It's utter hell. And so I had started to become sort of obsessed with this idea of like learning and then teaching what it takes to create safety in intimacy and in our bodies. And April was just all about that too. And so that's when Safe to Love came to be. Our first iteration of the title was Safety First Intimacy, but we realized that a lot of people were confused by that. So, and also Safe to Love is, it's just such a beautiful title and such a beautiful phrase. Like I love it every time we say it and every time I hear it, because it really embodies like what we want to create, like what we want, like what our shared mission is people everywhere deserve to feel a space in their life where they can experience deep love and feel safe doing it. And healing work takes place in that, and what's happening is people are going out and they're having these sexual and these emotionally vulnerable, emotionally intimate relationships without creating the foundations of safety. And so everybody's just getting more and more fucked up. And the thing about dating is that the older you get, some parts of it get easier. We just start to lose a lot of the weird, awkward BS that we have when we're younger.
Well, you know yourself more.
You know
what you
yourself
want more.
more. You know what you want more. But every year of your life, you throw another bag on the cart that you drag with you from relationship to relationship, right? And so, it became less just about how do we create spark, and how do we create a connection, because those things are important. But a lot of people are teaching that, and a lot of people are doing that without the fundamentals underpinning it, and then everybody's losing their mind. It's so painful to let yourself surrender and fall in love and get attached and be seen by somebody, and then have that person not be ready to hold you in that. So the idea is safe to love, safety, intimacy, sex. It's got to flow in that direction. Otherwise, it will just be perpetuating that cycle. So, and that's what
Let me ask you a question real quick on that. So how did you create safety from your last toxic relationship? What was your steps to create safety in your body to be able to feel safe to love with me?
Well, boundaries. Probably my favorite word.
His love language is boundaries.
I think that if you were to go up to anybody in my community, anybody that knows me, and be like, Mr. Boundaries, they'd be like, you mean Chad? I love boundaries. I think boundaries are sexy. I think I like my consent enthusiastic and my boundaries clearly communicated. And I also believe, and we did a little boundary play. I mean, and I think that's the details of that. I feel like we could share more about when we tell about our story, but it's true. It's like, here's the thing. We're all screwed up in a different way, right? Let's just embrace it, right? Like we're all screwed up. It's beautiful. We're beautiful, messy people.
It's called being human.
It's called being human. Yeah. We all tend to have the same wounds, but we also tend to have often very different expressions of those wounds. And so some people don't know how to let anybody in. They just don't. They just don't ever let anybody in. And they keep these walls up around their heart, keep these walls up around their life. People may date somebody for years and still not actually share fears and wants and desires with them, right?
Or be married to them for 15 years.
Or be married to them for 15 years. Some people react in the opposite way. And I'm one of those people, because I don't know how to front. I get very, very, I almost get like itchy and uncomfortable and agitated with when I'm interacting with someone's mask. Like I want to know, it's just boring to me. Like I want to know what's under that. And I also just don't know how to not overshare. So I had to learn to kind of consciously create the process of letting someone in. The process matters.
Yeah.
Compatibility matters. All that stuff matters, but if the process matters too. And so I let's set boundaries here and let's go move slowly. Let's move slowly. It's very important to me. We met, I believe, like January 6th. I think it was right before I got laid off. And the Tantra retreat that we met to be healing partners for was the very end of March. And we were very clear, like, we're going to just be in this container that has a beginning, a middle, and an end. There was no talk of a relationship. There was no talk of any of that, like, which was hard at times. So there wasn't just like sexual boundaries that we had, but there was emotional boundaries. There was boundaries about commitment. There was boundaries about expectations or talks about the future, right? We really made sure that we created a container to keep what we were exploring together in the moment for a period of time. Because the reality is we feel love We can call it infatuation. And people say, oh, it's infatuation, not love. The only difference between the two is the length of time and how much you actually know about the person. It feels the same.
Mm-hmm.
We feel those feelings for each other, for other people, long before we actually know them.
Mm-hmm.
So what are we in love with, right? What are we in love with? We're in love. Our magnificent minds, these pattern recognition supercomputers that have led to this, that have, led to this evolutionary advantage where now we as human beings, hairless apes, run the world. It just loves to fill in blanks. It's obsessed. It's why we love like murder mysteries and stuff. Like we just love to get a couple clues and then paint a picture around it, right? Like those connect the dots, draw like 4 dots and then boom, paint a whole face around it. And that's what we do instinctively with people. We get to know someone. We've known them for a week. Maybe we've known them for 2 weeks. They've told us all this stuff. We've had this beautiful kiss and sex. And we're like, and our minds just fill in the blanks with this pattern of our dream of a life. And navigating that period of time, it requires our adult conscious self to just constantly check us and be like, okay, this feels really good, but we don't know yet. Let's just see how it plays out. And that's basically what we did. And we really did not even, we kind of just set boundaries in clear, sober mind before we were sort of lost in each other.
Yeah, we made agreements.
We made agreements.
Yeah.
We set boundaries with ourselves and each other that we would not have we would not talk about that. And so we went and we had this tantric weekend, and then you were a part of this apprenticeship program. So you stayed for the weekend and I went home. You stayed for like 2 more days. I went home and went home and was like, and that was like the end of our, that was the end of our, container. And I was like, I don't want this to end. And so then I asked you if you wanted to be my girlfriend, which, by the way, man, women really like when you have courage. So this is probably more to young men. I've been trying to help my son's friends. Men will look for like all the evidence that they're going to get a yes. And the reality is, like, if you got women will exist in this quantum state with men where they'll be like, well, I don't know, I might date him. But then if a man is like, I'd like to take you on a date, women's like, whoa, okay, let's do that. So I asked you to be my girlfriend and you said yes. And, that's how our anniversary is April 1st. So that's always going to be funny. But that is, how we did it. Like we had to take our time and we had to do so consciously because our internal drive, our bodies, our hearts, they don't really care about the future. They don't really care about what it really takes to have compatibility of if we could actually be together. And, I've got this and you've got that, or you live here and I live there, or your dreams to move to Scotland and I have a child, or all these things do matter. They do matter for the ability to have a long-term relationship, but our bodies don't care. They just want what they want when they want it. And so we have to.
And then they don't want to let it go.
We have to develop this. And then they don't want to let it go. And once we're attached to something, we will self-abandon religiously to keep it. So it's important to make sure to keep our higher selves in line and set boundaries with ourselves to make sure that we have those things of compatibility. And I should also point out that was where we sort of kept it. Like, we're going to date. Even though at that point there was really deep feelings. And both of us were thinking,
we were like, I really, really like you.
Yeah,
I adore you.
Yeah.
We would say everything except for the L word.
Yeah. And again, that process, how that played out to where we're here today is another beautiful story that I would like to say for when we can talk about that. But that is something that I also teach people. Like, nobody talks about the process. And you go online right now and you just see what's popular in the sphere of the relationship influencer sphere. And let's be real, that's where everybody's getting their freaking information is from popular Instagram accounts.
Yeah.
Everybody. They just talk about like what we need in a partner, what most of it is what other people should treat, how other people should treat us, which is good because most of us have not been treated well, and we need to know that message. But it's also created this like problem where everybody's learning red flags.
Yeah. Actually, maybe Speaking of the process, can I ask how you being an engineer has like affected or impacted or like influences the podcast that we do?
Well, it definitely influences the work that I do
Yeah.
a lot in how I approach coaching, which really, I guess, it's not too dissimilar,
Mm-hmm.
right, to what we do here, because it's very practical
Mm-hmm.
and very risk based. You know, I ended up in quality engineering, not to my, which is, I probably would have found a lot of satisfaction in regular engineering, but really what my job was all about risk analysis, right? And I learned to look at the world from this perspective of risk. Everybody in a non-binary way, people want to cheat the game.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I see almost universally in both the clients that I've worked with and the friends that I've talked to throughout the years. People want to cheat the game. How can I get love without risking my heart?
Mm-hmm.
And the answer is you can't. And trying to operate from a place of uh, fear and pain avoidance is what is keeping you stuck.
Mm-hmm.
Full stop. But there's also a lot of us that are just tragically reckless with our heart. And so, you know, what I do and what I teach people to do is like take intelligent risks, right? And that's sort of kind of what I said, where I was going to get to know you, and more than that, I was going to make sure you got to know me,
Yeah.
before we fell into lovey-dovey land. Because I've fallen into lovey-dovey land. Like I've had the L word told to me within a fortnight more than once. And I was feeling it, right? So wanted to get to know you first, wanted you to get to know me, wanted to make sure that we had some of the fundamental requirements to actually have a long-term relationship, not just a beautiful experience. Because at this point in my life, I had enough of those beautiful experiences.
Yeah.
I think
And well,
they're
because
important.
of the podcast, we also wanted to take it even extra slow.
That's true.
Because the podcast
That's true.
was like more important at that time than actually the
And
lovey-dovey relationship.
and I think that's true. To me, it's even more that the mission.
The mission.
And
Yeah.
I think that's what makes our relationship so beautiful. And at times it's been hard.
Yeah.
But it's built on a foundation before mutual attraction. It was built on a foundation of a shared mission. And so, but eventually we both had to risk our heart. And so that's sort of where I say, like in the world of in medical devices, you cannot have, in the world of medicine in general, everything you do has risk. Every single time you get your blood drawn, every single time you get a flu shot, every single time you get your teeth cleaned, there's a risk. Something could happen. Something sometimes does happen. So risks in that world are always outweighed by benefits. So it kind of sounds clinical and unromantic, but I really look at what I do with my heart from this risk benefit analysis. And I make sure before I put my heart out there that I've from a kind of reasoned adult state of mind, made sure that it was worth the risk. And that takes time, it takes time. And so I take this sort of risk approach. I really do. Sometimes I find myself with clients and it will hit me like, God, I am just, this is all coming from my engineering career. And also we talk about safety, right? Yeah. And I actually have this piece that I'm writing for our Substack that hopefully will be published by the time this episode drops, where I kind of talk about that, right? Like, what does safe mean? Safe does not mean the absence of risk, right? That is not possible. Like literally every single breath you take is risk. It could be breathing in something that could be shortening your life by some bit. Like life itself is risky. And so how do we embrace that without going all the way to the other end of recklessness? And we've seen that, right? We've seen that, especially for any of our listeners that live in Utah. You have seen this in the ex-Mormon community. It is a wild thing to know people who leave the Mormon church and they have been in a safe bubble, a safe a comfort bubble, a contained little bubble their whole life. And they're just like, I'm going to do all the things I didn't get to do as a kid. And it's like, imagine like if any of you ever were at like a party when you were like, a teenager, maybe 18 in college, but that level of like wild recklessness, except these people now have credit cards and IDs. It's just,
well, they have also children and money and their own house,
but they don't necessarily always care about that.
They don't. Yeah. That's what
but it's just, reckless. There's this, people think in binary. People think in like safe, protected, nobody can touch me, or wild and crazy, YOLO. That's a phrase we used to have back, by the way. I don't know if Gen Z still has that. YOLO, you only live once. You scream that as you do something stupid.
Yeah.
Did you know that?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, some of people know. But the, I like life should, nothing good ever happens in the extremes, right? So I look at like, how do we bring ourselves in that balance where we are taking risks, but we're taking smart risks. We're taking risks that we consciously choose into, not ones that not impulsive risks, not like hormonally based risks or risks that come from our wounds or risks that come from that part of us that feels like we missed out on life or our jinkies. That's
talking about myself.
That's how I teach people to live. That's how I try to live. That's the North Star of living to me, right? Like, but life is meant to be one where you take risks, and all too often people seem to oscillate from one end to the other. And I've done that. I mean, when I was 22, I had a bullet bike and I drove around on it with no helmet, wearing gym shorts, and I look back and think that's really stupid. Like, I have a child now, and the risk of a bullet bike in general is just not worth it to me. But for God's sake, if you're going to ride a motorcycle, like, put on a helmet, and wear
pants.
And wear pants. Yeah, wear pants. Because
pants not optional.
Because road rash is not sexy and it's not a fun time. And so, I would say it's just kind of trying to bring people back from that, and we'll swing too. We will, like, we'll go through this oscillation where we're like, I'm not gonna spend any money. I'm not gonna do anything. I'm not gonna leave the house. I'm never gonna date again.
Yeah.
How many times I'm not dating for a while.
Yeah. Well, and the absolutes are like what? Like, I'm never going to love again. I'm never going to give my heart away.
I'm not going to do this for a year. We love those two. I'm not going to do this for a year. I've only done like 3 things for a year in my entire life when I actually sent that goal out. And, in recovery, like we say, I'm not going to drink today.
Yeah.
So that's a whole other story. But then we'll like do that. Maybe we'll, for like 2 weeks, we'll like go to the gym and eat nothing but like kale and fruit smoothies, and we'll work out 17 times a day. And then we'll go ham and go to a party and party for like 3 straight days. Like we just have to get off this oscillation and kind of find ourselves sort of in that balance where the pendulum comes back and says, I am going to take risks that are worth it. I'm going to be bold, but I'm going to do it from a place of conscious choice. I'm going to tune in and say, what is it that's really important to me? This mission, and this podcast is a big part of the mission.
Yeah.
But this mission to
courage.
What is that? I always mess up the wording of it. Make the world believe in love again or something.
Yeah, we are here. We are on a mission to give the world courage to believe in love again.
I don't think that was
not it.
No, it's really good. I know we have to read it. The point is that is a mission. On. That is I'm gonna give her space for that.
Welcome to Safe to Love. We are on a mission to help the world believe in love again and give you the courage to find it.
Oh,
we do know our mission. We just have different ways of saying it, and both Chad and I are long-winded, so we have to like get it succinct down. Which we are coming to the end of our episode. Baby.
We are verbose,
and so I want to ask you one.
Let me just finish this one thought, and then you can ask me that. That's a mission worth risking big for.
Mm-hmm.
That's a mission worth leaving behind a comfortable career in engineering. That's a mission worth not knowing how it's going to work out.
Yeah.
And that's really what love is. Mm-hmm. And your relationship should be like that. Like, go into relationships where it's like, this is a woman worth risking the big hurt. That's true though, but it was pretty smooth.
It is, and that's why we're here. So thank you for being on this with me. Um, what's one piece of advice you would leave our audience with to give them hope in love?
What's one piece of advice I would leave the audience with to give them hope? You think I'd be better prepared to answer that? I would say to take a breath and stop judging everything by its immediate response. Um, just take a step back, decide what you want to do, and then give it some time. You know, don't try to decide. The only thing you should try to decide if you're on a dating app is if this person is somebody you want to have a date with. Quit trying to figure out if they're the love of your life. You're going to drive yourself nuts. You're going to invent a person in your head that doesn't exist. The only thing you should be trying to figure out when you're on a first date is this a person that I had, like, by the end of the date, was I bored talking to them? Is this a person I want to have a second date with? Quit trying to put that, is this the love of my life? Is this my partner? Pressure on the early part of dating.
Mhm.
And you will find that it becomes a lot more freeing, and trust that the process knows. What's that song that that you sing?
The way knows the
The
way.
way knows the way.
You don't have to know the way. The way knows
The way
the way.
knows the way. Yeah.
Hmm.
Was that two pieces?
That was good. That's
Okay.
fine.
Okay.
Well, that was Chad and April with the Safe to Love. And we just want you to remember to be brave and that love is worth it. And it's out there waiting for you. Thank you.
Thank you.